am currently on hiatus for the winter break, but I didn't want to leave you hanging and make sure you have some great episodes to listen to until I return in mid-January. So let's go back in time into the Coffee with Yvonne time capsule to listen to these interviews from some of my favorite creatives and entrepreneurs changing the game. So grab your coffee and let's chat.
Yeah.
Look, when I'm ready to go to Zamunda, I'm definitely going to hit you up.
Absolutely.
Because I've already made a plan. I'm going to Ghana, and I need to go with a person who knows Ghana, because I will not be out here looking like a tourist trying to exchange money in these streets and not knowing what to do.
Absolutely. Whenever you're ready. You know I go every year, so whenever you're ready.
I know you do. I was like, oh, I should go with Nelly, but I will be staying out till probably 5 o'clock in the morning because you like being outside. And
I'm retired from that life, to be honest.
Did you?
Now, honestly, especially in Ghana, they got till like 2 a.m. for me. I don't be out till 7 a.m. anymore.
2 a.m. is even a stretch, Nelly. I need a nap before we go somewhere, right? So that nap needs to be around 5 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. The thing is, you can take a nap at like even 8 p.m. if you want and get ready to go out by midnight and then just come back at 7.
So I have breakfast hours. Okay, gotcha. Well, whenever I'm ready, I have it on my list to go to Ghana. I want to do a whole photo shoot and everything. Like I'm thinking 40th birthday, which is, dear God, that's about 4 years from now. Okay. I'm going to sit in that with my therapist. But anyway, as I mentioned, everyone, I have another special guest on the show, and this one's a little different for me because this is one of my marketing babies, and I'm just so proud. I tell Nelly all the time how proud I am of her, but I am so proud of her growth. I remember, let's take it back. I remember when Nelly joined us when I was at our old company, and she came in. And sometimes she just didn't want to even pick up the phone to talk to anybody because the thought of talking to people in real life freaked her out. And she has become someone who didn't want to talk on the phone to a 2-time authoress. If you watch Girlfriends Going Up, you know where that statement came from. But she is now a 2-time author, works in the tech industry, clothing designer, I think as well. Is that on the list too, Nelly? Clothing designer, creative consultant, international traveler, and all-around OG baddie for her generation. I have Arnell Opoku on my show today. Hey, Nelly.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm great. It's actually so crazy you mentioned that. I forgot I used to be running from the phones when people would call. And I would always tell Yvonne to answer it. Oh my God.
But you know what? You know what that is? Come on, Nelly. Come on.
It's definitely growth.
Yes, it is. It's growth. It's growth. And in your growth, you have really evolved into someone who is an inspiration for your generation, Gen Z. I know I get on you and Kennedy a lot about Gen Z and my terrified hopes for the future.
Technically millennial. I'm the last of members.
We discussed this before. You are Gen Z. All right. Let it go. You're Gen Z. Okay. Let it go. But I'm really proud of the work that you have done. And today you're on my show to talk about your book that I have here.
Yes.
Ya's Book of Affirmations. Before we get into that, I need to give you your flowers, which is a growing bouquet, but we're just going to focus on you being an author in this bio. If you want more tea, good tea on Nelly, go ahead and check her out on all her socials. She is that girl. But Arnell Opoku is a Ghanaian. You know I'm American. Ghanaian? Is it Ghanaian? Okay. You know I'm American. Forgive me. Is a Ghanaian American 2-time author, storyteller, designer, and IT consultant. Born and raised in Northern Virginia, she received her BA in PR, Public Relations, from George Mason University. She is the author of 2 books, Dear God, Love Your Daughter, and Ya's Book of Affirmations. Outside of being an author, she served as producer and creative director of 2 documentaries in collaboration with Seek Code, is a mental health advocate in the Ghanaian community, and is the CEO of her upcoming fashion brand launching in 2024. She continues to stay true to her purpose by creating a lane for herself and bring together her passions for faith, storytelling, and fashion. And with that being said, welcome to Coffee with Yvonne. Arnell!
Thank you.
I'm so proud. And Nellie, just to let you know, I'm giving this book to my sister-in-law to give to my niece, who is also named Zoe. I think this is a really great stocking stuffer. At the time that we're recording this, y'all, it's December, but the episode itself will launch the first of the year, like, January, February. So, I'm already holiday shopping. My list is not complete, but this is a great way to check off my list with your book. Okay. So, as I mentioned, this is your second book, your first book titled Dear God, Love Your Daughter. But what made you interested in entering the children's book space?
So it's funny. I actually wanted to write a children's book first. That was always my goal. And I have one in the drafts, actually, that I had written. But at the time when I was like ready to put it out there, I think, no, I had just graduated from college, couldn't find a job, and it's very, 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 very expensive to produce a children's book. And so that's when I kind of had to switch gears, and God kind of gave me another idea. But honestly, what really made me like want to tap into the children's space is I just think when it comes to kids, like we as a society, as a people, really need to be intentional about cultivating their minds. And that's how, and we do that through reading and through TV shows and all of that stuff. But like, it's key to know like what you're putting out there and what's, what your child is looking at or watching, listening to, reading, all of that stuff. So for me, it was more so like, I really want to empower people, but I want to start as young as possible, because the younger we start, the better they are in the future. So that was kind of like my main motivation.
I love hearing the story behind that, because some people enter different spaces but don't have a why besides making money. But when you walk into your purpose, as you mentioned, the good Lord told you to pivot, like Scottie Pippen was like, okay, look, I know it's hard to find a job right now, but why don't we do this that I put on your spirit?
Yeah.
For you to do as well to impact people's lives.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you are using your personal reasons and storytelling in this book to create that space for other parents to have open and honest conversations. One thing I love about your book, Nellie, it's the visuals for me. As Beyonce said, you are the visuals, but the visuals you have created in this book, the illustrations are so vivid and colorful. So, one, how did you decide on the color story for the book? And two, how do the colors tie into the overall message?
Yes. Shout out to my illustrator, Io. If you're looking for a book illustrator, she is just amazing. Honestly, the cover, like, it really just blew my mind, because where we ended up was not where we started. And I went through a bunch of different like color palettes in the beginning, and like tried purples and pinks at one point and all of this stuff. Even the cover design, like what I wanted it to be, it wasn't really kind of fitting with like the whole collective of the book. So I kind of had to pivot in that way too. And so when we finally got to this, honestly, for me, when it came to the cover, like book covers are super, super important, whether it's a children's book or just a regular chapter book. Your cover is the first thing people see. And I really wanted it to capture the message, but also be very vibrant. And so having a little Black girl on the cover was, of course, like number one. And it was very imperative to me that she had her natural hair. So I did the natural puff. And then the words around her, like I wanted the message to be very, very clear of what this book is about and what the story that I'm going to take your child through. And as far as colors, we kind of went back and forth on colors, but we came up with this like final picture design. And then we had two colors, and one was like a purple and yellow, and then we had like this tealish green and yellow. And for me, I went with this color because I felt it popped more, and also, though it is a girl on the cover, I wanted it to feel more inclusive. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want it to be like too girly, because it was like, affirmations are for everybody at the end of the day, boys and girls. And that kind of also fueled like, the thought like, I think I should probably do another one specifically for boys.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted it to be inclusive in that way. And not really be so like, oh, it's like, girly or whatever. So yeah.
You wanted everyone to feel seen in your storytelling.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And that makes a lot of sense. And also, I love how you're tying in your knowledge of marketing and your choice of selection for color. Can you share a bit more about how that your marketing background played into the book's development? Like how you thought about, okay, this is how big the font should be. This is, how many illustrations we should use. Like, give me a bit more of that story.
Yeah. So when it came to like the marketing aspect, I think honestly, from the very beginning, when it came to the illustration process, because it was really long, but I really wanted to be able to like capture people's attention through imagery. And so with that, like even, for example, me having the little girl on the front cover, like how I kind of tied that to my marketing. I do a lot of visual marketing, so I love visual storytelling. I'm a video girly, so like any book that I've written has some type of like video promo with it. And so that was something that I saw from the beginning, even before we finished the cover. And I was like, okay, that's what I want because it ties to the visual storytelling that I did with my niece, having her as like the little girl and telling that story through that. And I think also like, again, storytelling is so much more broad than just words. Like you can literally tell a story through anything. And what is marketing? It's storytelling.
You better come through, Nelly. Go ahead.
Yeah, so being able to tell a powerful story through not only your words, but your graphics, your images, how you even promote something, it's going to drive people. It's going to connect people. And honestly, for me, when it comes to marketing, my strength, I always say, is I am going to make you feel. I will pull on that emotional plug of yours. And so with everything that I do, my main thing is, okay, how can I make this person feel, this stranger feel, whether it's through through like the videos or through the cover. Like even yesterday, I work with this family shelter out in Brooklyn, and the admin, I've been doing like digital ads for my book, and the admin came across one of my digital ads. And the first thing she said to me was, your cover is what pulled me. And I was like, wow. And I was like, how so? And she said, it pulled me emotionally because I saw a little Black girl on the cover. And it's automatically, she was like, the kids at my shelter need this, you know? So yeah, that's always been my tactic. And that's why like I'm a huge Nike girly, because Nike, they are like the most powerful storytellers ever.
Yes, they are. And they're very good at authenticity and doing it in a way that doesn't feel forced. Like there have been many times a Nike commercial and also a Toyota commercial has made me cry because like how it pulls you in. And I love how you talked about the marketing tactics you use. You use video content, you use authentic storytelling, you tied in the power of the color to impact people's perception of the book through the digital ads or targeted ads. For those who aren't familiar, targeted ads are basically using certain location tags and keywords of people who may be interested in your content to draw in that prospective audience and get people to click and hopefully purchase or take action behind that ad. So by you being strategic of using the cover of the book, you pull people in with this cute little Black girl. Like she is so adorable on this cover. And then I also love, and I meant to tell you this, the blue or the teal that you use is very similar to that teal color that Michelle Obama used for her book.
Ah.
I meant to tell you that. Yes, I saw that connection because Michelle Obama, again, being a beautiful brown-skinned woman and having this pop of bright color behind her makes her stand out. So by
Yeah,
you making that choice in your color, you're making her stand out as well, along with the yellow in the title. So very smart, very smart. I see you. I see you. I see you, Nelly. So one thing I really want to talk about are the parents. I'm not a parent. I'm a proud auntie. I love my niece as
same.
opinionated as she is. Love her dearly, but she is at this age, being full transparent, where she's um, starting to see herself, and it may be positive or negative. And little black girls, little black boys, people of color, it's important that you have positive messages behind your children so they can feel affirmed when they go into the world. So how can parents use your book to combat negative messages and plant positive messages in their children?
So honestly, I think it's as simple as like, paying attention to your child and kind of seeing like, where their strengths are, where they're gifted and all those things, and really cultivating that for them and then affirming that in them. And I think something like that makes this book special, right, is she's my character, Ya, who is me in hindsight, right? I wrote this in the lens of like my 6-year-old self. And she has her own book of affirmations. So she wrote things down so that when she gets sad, she can go back and remind herself, this is who I am. Like, I am creative. I am this, right? Because as life kind of progresses, there's going to be a lot of things that will make you question who you are. Am I good enough? Am I talented? Can I do this? Right. And so the earlier that we pour into kids and tell them like their strengths and, cultivate that and tell them that you can, or that you are beautiful, or that you should love your skin, or all of those things, as they grow up, those things will already kind of be embedded into them to the point where like negativity won't really kind of seep in and plant that seed as it would if somebody didn't know that about themselves, or somebody didn't have that type of, upbringing and things like that.
Yeah, and that makes sense because there's a theory that says your inner child, your conscious is your inner child speaking to you on a daily basis, whether it's positive or negative. And, when you, for example, like you mentioned, those words that are ingrained in you, when you have those negative thoughts, it's either your inner child speaking up to combat it and say, no, 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 that's not who you are, or they're affirming that negativity.
Yeah.
So your book is actually very helpful in that. And I love how, as you mentioned on the cover, it has positive words around this cute little girl. There are positive words like special, brave, smart, confident, strong, funny, beautiful. And a lot of times for children, if they don't have parents in their life who affirm them, they look for that affirmation in other places. And sometimes those other places are not sources that should be considered inspirational. No shade, no shade to current pop culture or anyone like that, but I would not want my niece or anyone that is a young person in my family looking up to Krishan and Blueface, or some of these other folks who to me are not positive representations of the culture.
Yeah.
I would rather them be strongly affirmed in their values and the people who truly love them to speak life into them. It's very easy to get lost is what I'm saying. And I noticed in your author's note, you mentioned, like you said before, you wrote the book for the little girl who struggled with self-confidence. Can you share a bit more about how lack of self-confidence really did impact you growing up, where you had to take that 6-year-old self and put it into this book?
Yeah. So I think growing up, I never really believed just how talented I really was or am. And it's because honestly, and I think because of that, it kind of transpired in like my actions. Like I would start something and never finish. Like it was very inconsistent because one, I didn't really have anybody really like recognize and then cultivate those gifts that I have. And two, there was nobody really giving me like that push, right? And I think as kids, like you really need that kind of boost and that support. And that wasn't something that I always had as a kid. And so it made things really hard, and it started to like reveal itself mostly like in my adulthood. And then there's also, the like inner stuff. Like I never thought I was like pretty enough, good enough for anything. I wasn't, I guess, back then being dark skinned wasn't, what it is now. Like nobody was, glamorizing like the chocolate or whatever. And then when you go to a predominantly white school, like nobody's really checking for you, right? And so um and so even with that, like it starts to make you think that something is wrong with you. And I was never the type of girl who like, some girls be like, oh yeah, I have a roster, I'm talking to 10 people at a time. Like I was never that type of girl. Never really, asked out much, like all of that stuff, right? And it does take a toll on your confidence because you start to internalize things and you think, well, I'm not pretty, or, I'm fat, or all of these things. And I was also a cheerleader, and even, dealing with that being at the time one of the thicker ones.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, BBLs and being thick was not the fashion, right?
It was not, no.
And so it's like you're looking at that, and then you start to again internalize. Oh, maybe I should be skinny. Maybe if I just lost, 15 pounds, I would be considered beautiful, right? And then what did that turn into? That turned into a pattern of disordered eating that followed me up until my adult years, And so little things like that really took like a hold of me. And it made my adult life very difficult, I think. And so stepping out into like my outside endeavors, like fashion or writing, those things, it's even to this day, like right now, it's very much a struggle. Even yesterday, I got a word that like a little girl read my book, and she said that it felt like I was talking directly to her. And in reality, what people don't know is like, honestly, every time I do something made, like whether it's a book or anything like major, there's this like after I've released it, there is this like kind of, low period that I go to where I feel like my works like are not doing anything. Like I don't feel like I'm making impact or making reach or whatever the case is. And it's because I still struggle with that. You're not good enough. And so it's really a constant like fight between that. And it's like, even though I feel a certain way, I have to put these things out regardless, because if not, you're literally just going to be stuck and do nothing. And I never want that to be my story. And I also, like for my future kids, I don't want that to be their story either. And so because of that, I really try and push and do everything that my heart's set on, regardless of how I feel, because I want, my future kids or even my nieces and nephews to know that like, okay, like she went after everything that, her heart desired, and therefore I can too.
Yeah. And I appreciate how you were very transparent about, struggling with self-image, whether it was, complexion, weight, etc., because those are all things that I have personally dealt with in my childhood. Not to go too deep into it because my therapist has notes, but understanding, how certain words can impact how you look at yourself. My 10-year-old self is always struggling with body image, because my other parent would say things like, are you going to eat that? You don't want to get too fat, this, that, and the other, or never made me feel beautiful. And it has, to me, it had a lot to do with the fact that I was the darkest out of all of his children, and it kind of made me feel like a black sheep. So seeing your book and those words and understanding a bit more from our personal conversations where that comes from, it was very affirming for me as well, because like it takes a lot of self-work to love yourself, and it's easy to look confident and project confidence but not actually be confident. Absolutely. At the same time. And I think people don't understand that connection, because when I tell people that for years, from childhood to like my mid to late 20s, darn near 30s, I struggled with confidence and body issues. They're like, but you look so confident. Like you always look X, Y, and Z all the time. And I was like, yes, but on the inside, I was like, oh God, I gained another pound, or oh, I went up in weight again, or dear God, why can't I be this size? Knowing that my body was never made to be that size. Even when I was my tiniest, Nelly, when I was like 15, short story, that was the only time my other parent told me I was pretty or that I looked beautiful, when I was that tiny. And I was playing two sports at the same time, and I had the metabolism of a 15-year-old, so everything I ate just went away anyway. But even then, I was told by my doctor, and my mom gave him a nice little Christian cuss out over this, but even then I was told by my doctor I had to lose another 20 or 30 pounds because I was still considered overweight. And so things like that really stick with you, and you're always hyper aware of how you look and how you present yourself. And it takes a lot of healing in your journey to have full acceptance. And I love how your book allows for kids at that young age, their formative years, to build up their armor of self-confidence. So when they go into the world, they're not left exposed, and they have something between the words of others and their own personal affirmations. One thing I did want to talk about, and you briefly mentioned, as a Black woman of darker complexions, both of us are, it can be challenging to think of yourself as beautiful when the world tells you opposite. And you having this cute little brown little chocolate drop on the cover of your book is very affirming. How can parents of children who may be of darker skin tones speak life into their kids when they see things on screens that tell them, anything closer to light or white is considered perfection? Like what can they do?
I always say words are powerful, and that's what sticks. And I think always, like, for example, my niece, I tell her all the time that I love your skin. Yours, like, even her natural hair. She has natural 4C hair. I'm like, you have such beautiful hair. Like, I always, anytime I tell her, anytime I see her, I kind of make sure to point those things out. And also, I think it's also what we see, right? So it's like, being more intentional about like showing our kids like more people who look like us. For example, like my nieces and nephews watch Gracie's Corner. Like Gracie is, a beautiful Black little girl. You know what I'm saying?
And that show lit too, by the way. I'm like, okay.
Listen, that show, I could sit there for hours watching that with them. But,
all day.
I honestly think it's what we see and what we hear, and like being intentional. I think these are things that we have to be consciously aware about, think about, and be intentional, like with our kids. Especially when you start to see your kids kind of question, if, is my skin beautiful? And you'll know things like that because people voice it through, it may not be direct, but kids will start to say little things that will give you that hint, like, okay, they don't think that, they look pretty today or are, good enough in this aspect. And being more aware and like really speaking to that thing. So it's like if your kid is questioning her skin or feels like, maybe I should, like or even ask you like, oh, like, why don't I look like this? Because, you know, especially in a lot of Black families, there are different shades of Black, right? And so it's like, you know, you could compare yourself to your cousin who's light skinned, like, oh, why does she look like this? And I look like that. But it's like, no, your skin is beautiful too. You're both beautiful the way you are and the way God created you. I think just being intentional and speaking that out loud so that they hear it, because we do hear, process, and remember, you know.
Mm-hmm. And you're exactly right. And every time I see my niece, I tell her how pretty she is. Every time I see my little cousin, I tell her how beautiful she is as well. One thing I do want to know with you, and this is our last question before we go into our quick fire questions, is there a plan to turn Ya's Book of Affirmations into a series? Like, you know, will she be coming back and giving us some more positive words? Like, what are the plans?
Well, honestly, at first, that wasn't the plan. I was kind of like, because honestly, y'all, this process was so long. Once I got to the end, I was like, I don't know if I ever want to write a children's because it was a lot. But I have been like thinking about it only because like now, after like dropping this and then, you know, giving it away and hearing feedback and stuff like that, I'm like, I think I need to do another one, just like specifically targeted at boys. Um, so that's something I'm thinking about as well. And I use the inspiration around me. So I have nephews, and I've tried, you know, the affirmation thing with them. I did a video on Instagram with my niece, kind of like going through affirmations with her. And I did the same experiment with my nephew, and it was very different, um, but still very effective. And so I think there are just two different ways that we can approach this when it comes to like having little girls and having little boys. So that's kind of what has my wheels turning. So yeah, you never know. You never know, but it's not off the cards.
But I think it'll be cool because I saw a couple of things in my head, like maybe having Ya introduce her friend Yoshan, or you know, something like that. I don't know, you know,
Mm-hmm.
who's her cousin or something like that, and then he transitions into his own storytelling. Could be one thing, and then another thing too. I love to say stretch your content out like pantyhose. You can take these affirmations and turn them into like a digital coloring book or something like that.
Yes.
Or also even take the words and make them like downloadable cards for families to have on their phone while they're getting their kids ready for school in the morning or whatever activity. So there's so many different ways that you can do it that I see with this book that will give it even more impact around the world. So very proud of you. I can't wait to see what you do next. I did clarification, y'all. I did buy the book. I did not slide in Nellie's DMs asking for a free copy. I put my card right on me on Amazon, and I actually bought the book. But before we close, I do have a couple of quick fire questions for you. Now, mind you, it was the top of the dome, Nellie. Don't overthink it. Okay? Are you gonna try? You gonna try to?
I'm gonna try. Wait, when you say quick fire, like I have to actually like on the fly?
Yeah, on the fly. I'll give you a couple seconds, but don't like give Jeopardy level weight. Like, we don't have time.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. In your opinion, who is the best rapper or singer of all time?
Best rapper or singer of all time. I will say Tupac for rapper, singer Lauryn Hill for me.
Okay. Tupac no longer is with us. We had a consistent catalog. Lauryn Hill just doesn't show up, but I can see how.
Yo, y'all need to leave my girl Lauryn alone. Okay. I know that she only has one album, but hear me out.
Technically two.
Okay, yes.
Unplugged. Yeah.
But she, off her main album, has won Grammys. She's touring to this day, like 15, 20 years later on that album. Like, Lauryn Hill she's a legend in my eyes. I love her.
Lauryn Hill is phenomenal. Miss Education. It's forever a classic. We're not arguing that. I would just love for her to be on time because I can't support this woman and you coming out so late. I got to log in for work by the time you show up. Like, I don't need that. I don't need that in my life, but I'll let that one go. I'll let it go. Okay. Next question. You've won a boatload of money. How? We don't know. Maybe it was a reality show. You finally hit the lotto. Somebody dropped off a bag at your door. Whatever. What is the first thing you would do?
Paying off my student loans.
Amen. Hey, Joe, come get this check. Come get this check, Joe. We did it, Joe. We did it.
That's the first thing Arnell would ever pay it off, and so that Nelnet will never contact me again.
And they have the nerve to be sending emails. You're doing a great job.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I got that yesterday, actually. And I was like, listen, Joe has one job.
Oh, you have just cancel them. But anyway, we're neither here nor there.
Yeah.
All right. You discovered you have magic powers. Like you're on your Harry Potter Expecto Patronum level-ish, mm-hmm. right? What powers, and that is plural, it can be more than one. What powers do you have?
I teleport. I'm not the biggest fan of flying. So if I could just snap my fingers and end up in whatever country for the weekend, I would love to do that.
Okay. I'm not a fan of flying either. Shout out to my doctor for my prescription of Xanax. Clean out when I fly. But teleporting, I've heard that from a few people. They either want to teleport or they want to be invisible is another one.
Oh, like, yeah. That would be cool too.
Yeah. A lot of creatives like to be invisible. And I think it's because we're so highly visible in the work that we do. When it's time for us to like recluse, we don't want to be bothered by anybody. Mm-hmm. Which is probably why Beyonce don't talk to us.
And I respect it.
I do too. And then last but not least, if you were a coffee, what kind of coffee would you be?
If I was a coffee, caramel macchiato. Is that coffee?
You eat those all the time? That is coffee. You used to get those all the time when we worked together.
That's like my signature if it's not pumpkin season, or the iced toasted vanilla shaken espresso.
Oh, yes, you love that one. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those are my two things. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. How can the people find out more about you and your work and also your perfume habit?
Oh, yes. For anything perfume, you can follow me on TikTok. Honestly, all my socials are the same, but you can follow me on TikTok at Arnell Chanel, Instagram. And then my book page is author Arnell Opoku on Instagram. And yes, you can get both of my books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of that stuff. And yes, feel free to send me a message, connect with me, all that. Especially if you have anyone who has any questions about like the book writing process or anything like that, I'm always like an open.
Yeah, because that seemed like it was a lot of work. I know I told you this before in text message, but it is a very good book, very well laid out. It does not look like you made this on Canva and then printed it in mass production. It actually looks like you put time and thought into it, and it shows. It definitely shows. Because if it didn't, I would tell you in a loving way.
Thank you. It was difficult. It was a lot, but we thank God that it's finished.
Yes, but I'm very proud of you and the work that you're doing. And I can't wait to chat with you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Coffee with Yvonne is produced and edited by Yvonne Pearson. Coffee with Yvonne is created by Pink Dollhouse Marketing. You can catch the latest episodes by subscribing to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.